The first mail system. Benjamin Franklin had essentially reorganized the British colonial post, making it functional and even profitable. So when the British turned him out, the Continental Congress immediately selected Franklin as the Postmaster General for the newly formed United Colonies Post, later to become the United States Postal Service. Despite the drastic improvements that Franklin made in the colonial postal system, sending letters through the mail was still prohibitively expensive. Ordinary citizens usually couldn't afford to mail a letter through the official post. They might try sending a letter by way of an acquaintance traveling near the letter's destination. But most American colonists sent very few letters in their lifetimes, averaging one letter received per person per year. Expensive postage was only part of the reason for this dearth. Another significant factor was that illiteracy was not uncommon among the colonists or throughout England and Western Europe for that matter. While basic reading skills were considered important for all children to learn, so they could read the Holy Scriptures in school, many American adults either never achieved these skills or forgot what little they had known. If sending news by letter became imperative, literate persons like town doctor or minister could often be found to read the letter to its illiterate recipients. But such a course of action was so cumbersome to arrange that most colonists rarely sent letters at all. Almost all the mail that came through the United Colonies Post, therefore, was sent by a select group of wealthy, upper-class citizens who could both afford the postage rates and be assured that the recipients of their letters were educated enough to read them. These were the same citizens, by virtue of their social standing more than their education, who fell naturally into the positions of governmental leadership in the colonies and in the new nation. Relief from exorbitant postage charges wouldn't come until 1851, when stamp fees were lowered to 3 cents per letter.
Samuel Cooper was one of the first to fight in the Revolutionary War when he was commissioned as a colonial officer in 1774. The Declaration of Independence had not yet been written. He was serving the British Crown as a second lieutenant out of Connecticut when the colonies started to splinter after Lexington and Concord. Cooper ended up commanding a militia stationed at the Roxbury Township outside Boston. He wrote home to his wife about a month after his unit camp was set up. Cooper writes exactly as many have when deployed. There is no detail about life, no sense of his daily struggles or concern, just a man who wants his wife to be strong and his children to be healthy. Many soldiers, despite their youth, have written similar words to those they knew they may leave behind. This is just one sample of thousands or hundreds of thousands of letters from the front over America's long life.
Roxbury, July 18, 1775. To my dear wife and children, I received your letter which I prize next to your person. The welfare of our family, I understand, is good. You tell me John is fat and rugged. which I enjoy to hear and prize above gold. The rest of our children I don't mention because I like them well. I shall give you but a short detail of affairs, for I expect this will not arrive. The state of the Army is such that I can't tell when I should come home. But I am encouraged that coming home in about a month, but not certain. I want you to send to me 2 pairs of linen stockings, for I have 2 pairs stolen. The rest are all wore out. I did not receive in the last letter to me that what I expected, but I hope to in the next. Dear Madam, I rejoice that I am able to acquaint you, that I enjoy a good state of health, and by God be praised, our company is hearty. The dangers we are to encounter I know not, but it shall never be said that to my children that your father was not a coward. Let the event be what will be, not trouble. Make yourself easy. In due time, I hope to return home in peace and enjoy the pleasure of a worthy wife and loving children. And I ascribe to you myself, your loving husband and father, Samuel Cooper.
Martha Washington destroyed almost all her correspondence from her husband when he died in 1799. After years spent in the crush of public notoriety, it was about the only thing in her private life that she could control. Only 3 letters escaped the mass eradication, 2 of which were found beneath the desk drawer after her death. One of those surviving letters is a brief but achingly beautiful missive penned by her beloved George during the Revolutionary War.
Philadelphia, June 23rd, 1775. My dearest, I am in a few minutes of leaving the city. I could not think of departing from it without driving you along, especially as I do not know whether it may be in my power to ride again till I get to the camp in Boston. I go fully trusting in Providence, which has been more beautiful to me than I deserve, and in full confidence of a happy meeting with you sometime in the fall. I have not time to add more, as I am surrounded with company to take leave of me. I retain an unalterable affection, which neither time nor distance can change. My best love to Jack and Nellie. In regard for the rest of the family, I conclude with the utmost truth and sincerity, your entire George.
In 1845, the United States annexed Texas, setting in motion a conflict between the U.S. and Mexico, not only about which country owned Texas, but also whether the southern border of Texas would be formed by the flow of the Nueces River or the Rio Grande. When President Polk offered to buy the disputed land of Texas and west to California for $25 million, the Mexican government refused. In April of 1846, President Polk sent a unit of 80 soldiers across the Nueces River and further south to the banks of the Rio Grande. When the American forces ignored Mexican demands to withdraw, Mexico attacked, killing several Americans and motivating President Polk to declare war on Mexico. Brevet Lieutenant Ralph Kirkham is awaiting orders aboard the ship Sophia Walker, about 80 miles from the Mexican city of Veracruz, as he writes to his wife.
April 18th, 1847, my dear wife. God bless you, my dear little Kate. To think after having been so happy together for the past 6 months, we are now separated. Not a day passes that I do not dwell on the quiet happiness of our Fort Gibson cottage. I used to think I had a stout heart and could brave the ups and downs of the world with fortitude, but I give up now. Restore me to the quiet and contented home, and all my ambition is gone. Today is Sunday, but oh, how differently we are spending it from what we used to do. I have been sitting on the deck, humming over the hymns we used to sing together, but I gave it up, sad at heart. September 9, 1847, Tacubaya, a neighborhood of Mexico City. I have just returned from the funeral ceremonies of 117 officers and men who were buried together. Poor but brave men who deserved a better fate. Tomorrow morning, 20 deserters who formed against us at Churubusco will be hanged, and some 40 more will probably be, for they were caught at the same time. Their sentence has not yet been published. We have been very busy moving our siege train today, and about Sunday the 12th we shall be in the city. I hear that the Mexican loss on the 8th was very severe. Nearly 3,000 killed or wounded, including 2 generals, Leon and Valdez, and some 700 prisoners, including 50 officers. Our loss was upwards of 600. I suppose not more than 1/4 were killed, but many of those must die, and a great proportion of the others will be crippled or maimed for life. September 10th, 1847, Tacubaya. Today, Captain Yuji has been moving the siege train out of town, and I understand now has 30 heavy pieces planted. I suppose tomorrow or next day, the firing will be opened upon the city of Mexico. This morning, the sentences of some of our deserters were published. These men, the San Patricios, or St. Patrick's, were found fighting in the enemy's ranks, and out of 29 tried by the court, at which Colonel Riley was present, 20 were hanged. The remaining 9 were branded on a cheek with the letter D and received 50 lashes on their back.
Isaac Grace, a private in the American infantry, writes to his friend, Mary Rolfe, back in his native New Hampshire, about the Battle of Churubusco.
We met Santa Ana with 30,000 strong fortified men. We only had 7,000 men to oppose them. The fight began about noon and lasted 3 hours. It was a hard and contested fight, and 1,200 of our men were killed or wounded. I had hair cut out of my head twice with musket balls, but done no hurt. And out of 20 men in the company I belonged to, 13 were killed or wounded. On the 14th, we entered the city, and the stars and stripes floated from the National Palace.
Santa Anna's defeat in this battle effectively put an end to the war, but hostilities continued until March 6, 1848, when the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed. By virtue of this treaty, the United States gained over 500,000 square miles of territory, including New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada, and parts of Colorado and Utah. The United States lost an estimated 15,000 soldiers, mostly due to disease rather than battlefield wounds. Mexican deaths were estimated by historians at 25,000. Heartbreaking war letters are those written by soldiers who have been mortally wounded and realize that their life is ebbing away. John Ross Waller volunteered to serve as a drummer boy in the Civil War when he was only 15 years old. He was shot in the leg and languished in a military hospital for weeks. He dictated a short letter to his family before he died.
Dear sister, father, mother, and friends, I received your letter, but I don't think I shall ever see another that you write. This is Friday night, and I don't think I will live to see the morning. But my kind friends, I am a soldier in Christ. I will meet you all in heaven. My leg has been taken off above my knee. I'm dying at this time, so don't mourn over me, for I have bled and died for my country. May God help you all to pray for me. I want you all to meet me in heaven above. Dear sister, you wanted to know if my leg would be stiff. God bless your soul, sister. I will be stiff all over in 24 hours. My wound dresser is writing this letter for me. When you get this letter, write to Alexander Neelan, for I won't live till morning. So goodbye, my friends. May God be with you. Goodbye. God bless my poor soul.
My very dear wife, indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. Lest I should not be able to write to you again, I feel impelled to write a few lines. that may fall under your eye when I shall be no more. Our movement may be one of a few days' duration and full of pleasure, and yet may be one of severe conflict and death to me. Not my will, but thine, O God, be done. If it is necessary that I should fall on the battlefield for my country, I am ready. I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause in which I am engaged, and my courage does not falter or falter. I know how strongly American civilization now leans upon the triumph of government, and how great a debt that we owe to those who went before us through blood and suffering of the Revolution. And I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all my joys in this life to help maintain this government and to pay that debt. But oh, my dear wife, when I know that with my own joys I lay down nearly all of yours and replace them in this life with care and sorrows, when after having eaten for so long years of bitter fruit of orphanage myself, I must offer it as their only sustenance to my dear little children. Is it weak or dishonorable, or the banner of my purpose floats calmly and proudly in the breeze, that my unbounded love for you, my darling wife and children, should struggle in fierce, though useless contest with my love of country? I cannot describe to you my feelings on this cold summer night, when 2,000 men are sleeping around me, many of them enjoying last, perhaps before that of death. And I, suspicious that death is creeping behind me with his fatal dart, am communing with God, my country, and thee. I have sought most closely and diligently and often in my breast for a wrong motive in this hazarding the happiness of those I loved, and I could not find one. Pure love of country and of the principles I have often advocated before the people, and the name of honor that I love more than I fear death, have called upon me, and I have obeyed. Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with mighty cables that nothing but omnipotence can break, and yet my love of country come over me like a strong wind and bears me irresistibly on with all those chains to the battlefield. Memories of all those blissful moments that I have spent with you come crowding over me. And I feel most deeply grateful to God and to you that I have enjoyed them so long. And how hard it is for me to give them up and burn to ashes the hopes of future years, when God willing we might still have lived and loved together and seen our boys grow up to honorable manhood around us. I know I have but few claims upon divine providence, but something whispers to me. Perhaps it's the wafted prayer of my little Edgar, that I shall return to my loved ones unharmed. If I do not, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I love you. Nor that when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it will whisper your name. Forgive me my many faults, and the many pains I have caused you. How thoughtless, how foolish I have oftentimes been. How gladly would I wash out with my tears every little spot upon your happiness, and struggle with all misfortune of this world to shield you and my children from harm. spirit world, hover near you while you buffet the storms of your precious little freight, and wait with sad patience till we meet to part no more. But oh, Sarah, if the dead can come back to this earth and flit unseen around those they loved, I shall always be near you. In the garish day, in the darkest night, amidst your happiest scenes and gloomiest hours, always. Always. And if the soft breeze fans your cheek, it shall be my breath. Or the cool air cools your throbbing temples, it shall be my spirit passing by. Sarah, do not mourn me, dear. Think I am gone, and wait for me, and we shall meet again. And as for my little boys, they will grow as I have done, never know a father's love and care. Little Willie's too young to remember me long, and my blue-eyed Edgar will keep my frolics among his dimmest memory. Sarah, I have unlimited confidence in your maternal care and your development of their characters. Tell my two mothers that I call God's blessing upon them. Oh, Sarah, wait for me there. Come to me, and thither lead my children. Sullivan.
Major Sullivan Ballou, with the 2nd Rhode Island Infantry, was killed in the First Battle of Bull Run. Over the years, the persona of Stonewall Jackson has attained almost mythical proportions. In life, they say he was almost impossible to know. In death, he became even more of an enigma because he was such a legendary leader. Anyone who has read anything about this mysterious, brave, bold, respected, and feared commander will find these tender-hearted love letters incredible.
September 25th, 1862. Darling, my heart turns to you with a love so great that pain flows in its wake. You cannot understand this, my beautiful, bright-eyed, sunny-haired princess. Your face is the sweetest face in all the world, mirroring as it does all that is pure and unselfish. And I must not cast a shadow over it by the fears that come to me, in spite of myself. No, a soldier should not know fear of any kind. I must fight and plan and hope, and you must pray. Pray for realization of all our beautiful dreams beside our own hearthstone and our own home. You and I, my goddess of devotion, and I, your devoted slave. May God in His mercy spare my life and make it worthy of you, your soldier.
And here is another excerpt from another letter written 3 months before the well-known Battle of Chancellorsville. In it, he tells of denying a furlough to one of his men while setting an example by staying at his post of duty, despite the hardships.
February 3rd, 1863. In answer to the prayers of God's people, I trust He will soon give us peace. I haven't seen my wife in nearly a year, and my home in nearly 2 years, and I've never seen our darling little daughter. But it is important that I and those at headquarters should set an example of remaining at the post of duty.
According to his wife, Jackson Jackson did finally get to see his daughter when she was 5 months old. It was raining, and he was afraid to take her in his arms with his wet overcoat. But upon arrival at the house, he speedily divested himself of his overcoat, and taking his baby in his arms, he caressed her with the tenderest affection and held her long and lovingly. During the whole of this short visit, he rarely had her out of his arms, waking her and amusing her in every way he could think of, sometimes holding her up before a mirror and saying admiringly,
"Now, Miss Jackson, just look at yourself."
Then he would turn to an old lady of the family and say,
"Isn't she a little gem?"
when she slept in the day, he would hover over her cradle and gaze upon her little face with the most rapt admiration, and he said he felt almost as if she were an angel in her innocence and purity. For those of you who are not aware, Jackson was accidentally shot by one of his own troops in Chancellorsville on May 2nd, 1863. He lost his left arm, but it was thought he would recover. However, he died of complications 8 days later, most likely of pneumonia.
William Child, Major, Surgeon with the 5th Regiment of New Hampshire Volunteers. September 22nd, 1862, Battlefield Hospital near Sharpsburg. My dear wife, day before yesterday, I dressed the wounds of 64 different men, some having 2 or 3 each. Yesterday, I was at work from daylight till dark. Today, I'm completely exhausted, but will soon have to be able to go at it again. The days after the battle are 1,000 times worse than the day of the battle. And the physical pain is not the greatest pain, it is suffering. How awful it is. The dead appear sickening, but they suffer no pain. But the poor, wounded, mutilated soldiers that yet have life and sensation make a most horrid picture. I pray God may stop such infernal work, though perhaps he has set it upon us for our sins. Great indeed must have been our sins if such is our punishment. Our regiment started this morning for Harper's Ferry, 14-mile distant. I am detailed with others to remain here until the wounded are removed. Then join the regiment with my nurses. I expect there will be another great fight at Harper's Ferry. Carrie, I dreamed of home night before last. I love to dream of home. It seems so much like really being there. I dreamed that I was passing Hibbert's house and saw you and Lud in the window. Afterwards, I saw you someplace. I cannot really know where. You kissed me and told me you loved me. Though you did not the first time you saw me. Was that not quite the soldier dream? That night I had been away to a hospital to see some wounded men. Returned late. I fastened my horse to a peach tree, fed him, and then I slept and dreamed of my loved ones away in New Hampshire. Write as soon as you can. Tell me all you can about my business affairs and prospects for the future of battle. Will Dr. Boynton be likely to get a stronghold there? One thing sure, I shall return to battle, if I live, and spend my days there. Give me all the news you can. Tell Parker and John when the girls to ride. Although I cannot answer them all, tell Parker I will answer his as soon as I can. I made acquaintances of 2 rebel officers, prisoners in our hands. One is a physician, both are Masons. Both are very intelligent gentlemen. Each wounded in the leg. They are great favorites of our officers. One of them was brought off the field 5th New Hampshire officers. He is giving them evidence of his being a Mason. Now, do right soon. Kisses to you, Clint and Kate. Love to all. Yours as ever, W.C.
Incidentally, folks, if you feel throughout the evening as if you want to applaud after any of our musicians perform, feel free to do so. Many touching personal stories were brought vividly to life through letters exchanged during the First World War. The correspondence between Private William Martin and his fiancée Emily Chinnix reveals one of the most heartbreaking of all these stories.
My dearest Will, I feel I must write to you again, dear, although there is not much news to tell you. I wonder how you're getting on. I can't help feeling a bit anxious, dear. I know how you must have felt, darling, when you did not get my letters for so long a period. Of course, I know, dear, you'll write as soon as ever you can. But the time seems so dull and weary without any news of you. If only this war was over, dear, and we were together again. It will be, one day, I suppose. Love always, Emily.
Emily wrote this letter to Will before she heard the devastating news that he had been killed in action.
Frank Richardson marched with 536 other men on October 3rd, 1914, from the training camp in Pleasantville, St. John's, to board the SS Florenzel, a steamer and sailing vessel that had been converted into a troop ship. On the 21st of October, the men of the regiment arrived at Palm Farm Camp, England, where they spent 7 muddy, chilling weeks. Private Richardson was aware that his parents were extremely stressed over the rumors that his transport ship, the SS Florenzel, that carried the first 500 from St. John's to England, had sunk. He wrote,
You must have received a shock when you heard that we'd gone down. I know the news spread down there that we were lost at sea. The Germans will not put us down. There are better times coming. Last night we went over to the YMCA. It belongs to the Canadians and it's a place for singing and dancing. You can buy what you want there. So I bought a book of writing paper with envelopes. I hope you will write me soon. It takes a letter a long time to come from here, so don't worry about not getting letters from me every week. I will make it a practice to write to you every Sunday night and post it on Monday. And you can do the same, Father. I wish we were on the front. Just now, we received our guns and bayonets. We are some class of regiment now. The Turks have declared war on Russia. We may be going to Egypt, since the Turks will try to get through there, and we have to try to stop them. This is the talk that's going on around here. So I close for now. I'm your loving son, Frank.
Frank Richardson got his chance to go to the front. He saw action in Turkey in 1915. He was wounded at Beaumont-Hamel, France in July of 1916, requiring extended hospitalization, and he was killed in action a year later.
At ease. February 28, 1919. My fellow soldiers, now that your service with the American Evolutionary Forces is about to terminate, I cannot let you go without a personal word. At the call to arms, the patriotic young manhood of America eagerly responded and became the formidable army whose decisive victories testify to its efficiency and its valor. With the support of the nation firmly united to defend the cause of liberty, our army has executed the will of the people with resolute purpose. Our democracy has been tested, and the forces of autocracy have been defeated. To the glory of the citizen soldier, our troops have faithfully fulfilled their trust, and in a succession of brilliant offenses have overcome the menace to our civilization. As an individual, your part in the World War has been an important one. And the sum total of achievements, whether keeping lonely vigil in the trenches or gallantly storming the enemy's stronghold, whether enduring monotonous drudgery at the rear or sustaining the fighting line at the front, each has bravely and efficiently played his part. By willing sacrifice for personal rights, by cheerful endurance of hardship and privation, by vigor, strength, and indomitable will, made effective by thorough organization and cordial cooperation, you inspired the war-worn allies with new life and turned the tide of threatened defeat into overwhelming victory. In leaving the scenes of your victories, may I ask you to carry home your high ideals and continue to live as you have served, an honor to the principles for which you have fought and to the fallen comrades you have left behind. It is with great pride in our success that I extend to you my sincere thanks for your splendid service to the Army and to our nation. Faithfully, John J. Pershing, Commander-in-Chief of the American Expeditionary Forces.
We will now have a 10-minute intermission.
February 3rd, 1943. The USAT Dorchester carried 902 servicemen, merchant seamen, and civilian workers sunk in the cold Atlantic. Through the pandemonium, according to those present, 4 Army chaplains brought hope in despair and light in darkness. Those chaplains were Lieutenant George L. Fox, Methodist, Lieutenant Alexander D. Good, Jewish, Lieutenant John P. Washington, Roman Catholic, and Lieutenant Clark W. Poling, Dutch Reformed. Quickly and quietly, the 4 chaplains spread out among the soldiers. There they tried to calm the frightened, tend to the wounded, and guide the disoriented to safety. Witnesses of that terrible night remember hearing the 4 men offer prayers for the dying and encouragement for those who would live, says Wyatt R. Fox, son of Reverend Fox. One witness, William P. Bednar, found himself floating in oil-smeared water surrounded by dead bodies and debris. I could hear men crying, pleading, praying, Bednar recalls. I could also hear the chaplains preaching courage. Their voices were the only thing that kept me going. By this time, most of the men were topside, and the chaplains opened a storage locker and began distributing life jackets. It was then that Grady Clark witnessed an astonishing sight. When there were no more life jackets in the storage locker, the chaplains removed their own and gave them to 4 frightened young men. It was the finest thing I had seen or hoped to see this side of heaven, said John Ladd, another survivor who saw the chaplain's selfless act. As the ship went down, survivors in nearby rafts could see the 4 chaplains, arms linked and braced against the slanting deck. Their voices could also be heard offering prayers. Of the 902 men aboard the Dorchester, 672 died, leaving 230 survivors. When the news reached American shores, the nation was stunned by the magnitude of the tragedy and the heroic conduct of the 4 chaplains. Valor is a gift, Carl Sandburg once said. Those having it never know for sure whether they have it until the test comes.
Cablegrams. Back in 1944, the fastest way to deliver important messages was to send a Western Union cablegram. There was a receipt from an Iowa Methodist hospital paid for by Emma's mother to send a cablegram to Emma's soldier husband to notify him that he'd become a new father. Things were abbreviated as much as possible because each word was costly. Succinct and to the point, the message relayed was this: Bruce arrived, both fine. It cost $8.86 to send this message, and it actually was transmitted a few days after the birth. Although paid for on the exact date, it surely was not exact instant messaging. AJ and Mitch. They began in North Africa May 8th, 1943. This was the first letter Mitch had received that survived the gauntlet of the Atlantic, where German U-boats routinely sank Allied shipping. A successful campaign to free North Africa from the grip of the Germans and Italian troops had just ended, but Mitch's war had just begun.
Dear Ann, arrive safely somewhere in North Africa. When this messed up world settles down, I will be able to tell you in the fullest detail the episodes of my travel. From what I have seen of these North African cities, or in fact any of the places where I've been, I'm left with a feeling of appreciation that I come from the good old USA. We just received the good news that the African campaign has come to a successful conclusion. I was in town this afternoon where I enjoyed a few beers at a beer garden located on the sidewalk. And while in town, I ran into some friends from my old outfit. How about seeing you in New York this coming weekend? I could really go for a good steak, but I'd rather see you. Love, Mitch.
2 months later, Mitch prepared himself for the Allies' next major offensive, Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily. On July 10th, Mitch, along with 160 Allied troops, took part. 40 days after the invasion, he wrote his first letter from Sicily, August 19th.
Dear Anne, please excuse a very long delay in writing to you. This delay is in no way an indication of a lapse of memory of you. You have been on my mind since our one night in Boston. Since I put foot on this island, I've been so busy, only getting a few hours sleep in 24, and letter writing has really been impossible. I landed on D-Day, which means the first day, about 10 miles east of Gila. Tomorrow, I will write you a long letter about my trip from Africa. In my travels through this mountainous island, I bought you a present, which I will mail when I get back to the company. I've been away from the company now for the last few days. So much has happened, and it's still forbidden to tell all. It makes letter writing very difficult. I will close this short note. I'm very tired. I've traveled 125 miles over rough mountain roads today, wishing I would be loved.
Mitch survived the campaign to win Sicily, but he was still fighting to win AJ's heart. In the meantime, he had another battle to fight: malaria.
October 23rd, 1943, dear Anne, just received your letter of September 16, which increased my morale greatly. Please excuse the writing, as I am still in the horizontal position in bed. I was out of the hospital for 5 days, but was forced to return when my malaria recurred. I'm feeling fine now, and I'm sure that this present treatment will rid me of this malaria. I would love to be with you and prove to you that you aren't suffering from delusions. If my letters have failed to convey to you that I miss you, and I'm constantly thinking of you. While in the hospital, I received your package of Yardley soap, which is quite a rarity here. Thanks for the package. Send some snapshots of yourself in the next letter. I would love to see that movie that you took in while you were in New York. My sister said it was good. Today, the weather is perfect for a football game. Someday we'll be able to see some good games together. We'll close, honey, for now, with all my love, Mitch.
The following 2 letters were written by Lieutenant Junior Grade Roger Means, a Navy Reserve pilot, to his sister Ruth Means. He uses the nickname Sapo in his salutation.
Dear Sapo, how is everything in cultural Cincinnati these days? As if I didn't know from your last letter. Too bad some of the girls at home don't come to the fighting front. There seems to be somewhat a shortage of women in most places. Well, that would be one way to ease the manpower shortage. Or would it? Join the wax. See a man. Things around here have been rather slow the last few days. Not even routine. Should pick it up in a little while, I hope. I'm dying on the vine for something to do. Of course, I've applied for a regular commission, and I hope it will be accepted sometime next year. That will start a 7-year probationary period, after which, this is all over, I will have to take exams to establish my rank. Rather a drawn-out procedure, but I think that it will be worth it. I'm certain of it, in fact. Got your letter of November 30, and regret to inform you that I shall be unable to see you in Chicago in the spring of 44. Maybe might make it in 46. Maybe even in 45. Can't tell much about it at present. Just have to see and wait what happens. Glad you had Thanksgiving dinner at Mrs. Day's. She's really swell people, and so are the others in the family. We did okay, but it wasn't like being at home. Much too far away. I don't know who has been giving you all of this socialist crap, but whoever it was, they haven't been talking to a man who owns one, and I mean a gun. The boys away from home have a few ideas about what sort of government they want, and I don't think socialism is quite it. Not as it stands, at least. Remember, the soldiers nowadays are pretty tough cookies, and they'll, for better or worse, they just go as time passes. Pretty rugged bunch to push around. Oh well, enough of that. Got a letter from home, and everything seems to be going about as usual. Funny how the New Deal picks on one person so persistently, especially the old PA. Can't think of much else to say at present, so I think I'll sign off. Have to write the folks and then get some sleep. Bye for now, and write soon. Love, Roger.
The following is the last letter written by Lieutenant Means to his sister Ruth. The same day Lieutenant Means posted this letter, he was shot down and killed while attacking enemy installations in the Bismarck Sea.
Dear Sapo, Happy New Year! Too bad we can't celebrate it together, such as war. Can't do much celebrating tonight. Tomorrow is a flying day. That means that sobriety rules society. At least this little society. Things have been rocking along in their own way as usual, and we've been just a little busier than usual. Maintenance can be a problem at times. Haven't anything much to say except that we have to move on again. Wish someone would pay our rent so we could settle down. In the States. Oh well, there will come a day. Still haven't seen anything in my Christmas present from you, but it should make a nice birthday present. Boy, what an opportunity for the Pony Express. Wells Fargo should rehire Joel McRae. Or is he in the Army? Heard from the folks today and everything seems normal at home. Nothing new has been added. Sapo, I'm going to knock off for now, as it's very, very late and I have work to do on the morrow. Such is life at the Southwest frontier, the Southwest Pacific frontier. Tell the Solons Happy New Year for me, and then it goes again for you. Bye now. Love, Roger. Oh, P.S. Will you see if you can send me some 127 film? I can't get it here. Raj.
Is a letter to Mr. and Mrs. Ben Letterman from Private Harold Letterman.
November 24th, 1944. Dear Mom and Dad, I received my first letters from you yesterday since I've been overseas. There were 3 of them, 2 female and 1 airman. I'm glad you finally sent me Rum's address, and now I can send and write to him. Yesterday was Thanksgiving. We had all the turkey and the trimmings. It's amazing when you think of all of us, so far from home, observing a holiday in the midst of a battlefield, Thanksgiving. I'm sure there was many of us who gave thanks to God today. I was sure one of them. Recently, I was able to see some of the dead boys that they had just taken off the battlefield. Some of the men back home, who of personal ambition attempt to prolong the war, should see the dead. I'm sure this war would soon end. When you look at all of them, you can't help but think, why are they dead? Just a year or so ago, they were going to school, working, and married. And now they're dead. Many among them had ambitions. All looked forward to the future. And now they're dead. It keeps shooting through my mind over and over. Why have these men died? I know why we fight. I know the values we are trying to secure. I hope these men have not died for empty words. I'm sorry, I went up on the philosophical side, but I just had to air out some of my thoughts. Love, Harold.
served in World War II. He knew he would not come home alive. He'd been captured by the Japanese at Corregidor and spent nearly 3 years as a prisoner of war. Fatally malnourished and incarcerated on a hell ship, Kennedy scribbled a farewell message to his parents on the backs of 2 family photographs.
Mommy and Dad, it's pretty hard to check out this way without quite a chance. But we can't live forever. I'm not afraid to die. I just hate the thought of not seeing you again. Buy Turkey Ranch with my money and just think of me often while you're there. Make liberal donations to both sisters. See that Gary has a new car his first year in high school. I am sending Wallace medals to his mother. He gave them to me September 42, last time I saw him in Bud. They went to Japan. I guess you can tell Patty that fate just didn't want us to be together. Hold a nice service for me in Bakersfield and put a headstone in the new cemetery. Take care of my nieces and nephews. Don't let them ever want anything as I want warmth and water now. Loving and waiting for you in the world beyond. Your son, Tommy.
Kennedy's letter was smuggled from one POW to another, and it was finally mailed to his parents in late 1945, more than 4 years after their son had left for the Pacific. When Frank J. Conwell was a child, wintry conditions frolicking outside in the snow. But the frozen forests of the Ardennes, where much of the Battle of the Bulge occurred, the conditions meant something else altogether. Writing to his aunt and uncle shortly after the battle, Conwell, a 34-year-old warrant officer with the 1st Infantry Division's 436th Anti-Aircraft Artillery Automatic Weapons Battalion, described those differences in whimsical and profound lyrical terms that masked his great sorrow over the buddies he had lost.
February 6th, 1945. Hello, John, Ann, and all the little ones. Greetings and salutations. I received your most welcome letter of January 11th today, and it was a good hearing from you. When I read your letter, I reread it again and again because I couldn't believe how much had taken place since our last meeting. Just as you said, John, it has been difficult for me to know where to start. So light up a candle, be calm, cool, and collected, and I shall try to give you a bird's eye view of what yours truly has been doing these past 34 months, which I have spent overseas. Hold your hat. Here we go. This will be the 3rd invasion to my credit. I went through the North African, Sicilian, and present invasions without a single scratch. Oh, what a lucky guy. And I sincerely hope my luck holds out. During these campaigns, I have been all over Ireland, England, Scotland, Algeria, Tunisia, French Morocco, Sicily, France, Belgium, and Germany. Sounds like a cook's travel tour, but definitely not. I've seen plenty of the sights. I've also seen plenty of action, and have just about had my fill. It's pretty tough stuff to take, to see some of your buddies getting knocked off, especially the ones who sweated it out way back in our training days. But as the French say, c'est la guerre. Thanks for wishing the best for the new year. I'll need it. While we're on the subject, I'll give you a vague idea of the jolly New Year's Eve we had. Wined and dined on the Siegfried line. Visited the Club Cologne on the beautiful ride. Big 88, heavy mortar guns, peace band, and that famous singer, Screamin' Mamie. Mortar shells all came. The mortar, the merrier. Well, what can I talk about now? As a last resort, we can always talk about the weather. The weather has been very cold over here with plenty of snow, and more snow. As I look at the kids sledding and throwing snowballs, etc., it brings back many memories of the good times I had when I was a kid. All of us lads from the northern states remember it well. As kids, we loved it. Took out our flexible flyers and went belly whopping down the hills. Made snowmen with it. Packed it into hard round balls that caught each other in the head and melted down the backs of their necks. When our hands got red and our feet got cold, we'd call it a day. We would go indoors to a hot fire and a good scolding for getting our feet wet. We'd put on dry socks and shoes and eat hot chow to take off the chill. When we were kids, snow sure was fun. There's a lot of snow on the Western Front these days, and the country looks like a Christmas carnival. The wires loop from pole to pole like tinsel on a Christmas tree, except where the weight of the ice and snow have pulled them down and the signal repairmen are patching them. Snow lies smooth on the hillsides. It's beautiful. But the flexible flyers have turned into tanks. The snowmen are Schutzstaffel, SS. The snowballs are grenades. The wet stuff trickling down the backs of necks is often blood. And when you're wet and numb with cold, there's no place to go to. Nothing to look forward to. Nothing but snow, cold, wet, beautiful snow. News certainly is good these days, and I hope it continues. With so many Nazis dying for Der Fuhrer, there's a possibility that Hades is beginning to look like Times Square on New Year's Eve. And with all the bombing and shelling of Germany today, Hitler has achieved what he always strived for, a greater Germany. folks, this is all for now, so I'll say goodbye for a while, hoping this letter finds you all in the best of health. I remain sincerely, Frank.
I finally have some good news. After the war, Conwell returned home to a career in accounting. He passed in 2006. Beginning on February 13, 1945, Allied warplanes carpeted Dresden, Germany, with thousands of tons of high explosives and incendiary bombs, creating an ocean of fire that ultimately killed tens of thousands of civilians. Ironically, a group of U.S. prisoners of war detained in the city lived through the firestorm virtually unscathed. On May 29, 1945, one of these POWs, a 22-year-old U.S. Army private first class, wrote the following letter to his relatives back in Indiana about his capture and eventual liberation.
Dear people, I'm told that you were probably never informed that I was anything other than missing in action. Chances are that you also failed to receive any of the letters I wrote from Germany. That leaves me a lot of explaining to do in Précy. I've been a prisoner of war since December 19th, 1944, when our division was cut to ribbons by Hitler's last desperate thrust through Luxembourg and Belgium. The other American divisions on our flanks managed to pull out. We were obliged to stay and fight. Bayonets aren't much good against tanks. Our ammunition, food, and medical supplies gave out, and our casualties outnumbered those who could still fight. So we gave up. The 106th got a presidential citation and some British decoration from Montgomery for it, I'm told. But I'll be damned if it was worth it. I was one of the few who weren't wounded. For that much, thank God. Well, the Supermen marched us without food, water, or sleep to Limburg, a distance of about 60 miles, I think, where we were loaded and locked up, 60 men to each small, unventilated, unheated boxcar. There were no sanitary accommodations. The floors were covered with fresh cow dung. There wasn't room for all of us to lie down. Half slept while the other half stood. We were released from the boxcars on New Year's Day. The Germans herded us through scalding, delousing showers. Many men died from shock in the showers after 10 days of starvation, thirst, and exposure. I didn't. Under the Geneva Convention, officers and non-commissioned officers are not obliged to work when taken prisoner. I am, as you know, a private. 150 such minor beings were shipped to a Dresden work camp on January 10th. I was their leader by virtue of the little German I spoke. It was our misfortune to have sadistic and fanatical guards. We were refused medical attention and clothing. We were given long hours and extremely hard labor. Our food ration was 250 grams of black bread and 1 pint of unseasoned potato soup each day. After desperately trying to improve our situation for 2 months and having been met with bland smiles, I told the guards just what I was going to do to them when the Russians came. They beat me up a little. I was fired as group leader. Beatings were very small time. One boy starved to death, and the SS troops shot 2 for stealing food. On about February 14th, the Americans came over, followed by the Royal Air Force. Their combined labors destroyed all of Dresden, possibly the world's most beautiful city, but not me. After that, we were put to work carrying corpses from air raid shelters, women, children, old men, dead from concussion, fire, or suffocation. Civilians cursed us and threw rocks as we carried bodies to huge funeral pyres in the city. When General Patton took Leipzig, we were evacuated on foot to Hellendorf on the Saxony-Czechoslovakian border. There we remained until the war ended. Our guards deserted us. On that happy day, the Russians were intent on mopping up isolated outlaw resistance in our sector. Their planes, P-39s, strafed and bombed us, killing 14, but not me. 8 of us stole a team and wagon. We traveled and looted our way through Sudetenland and Saxony for 8 days, living like kings. The Russians are crazy about Americans. The Russians picked us up in Dresden. We rode from there to the American lines at Hay in Lend-Lease Ford trucks. We've since been flown to Le Havre. I'm writing from a Red Cross club in Le Havre POW repatriation camp. I'm being wonderfully well fed and entertained. The state-bound ships are jammed, naturally, so I'll have to be patient. I've too damn much to say. The rest will have to wait. I can't receive mail here, so don't write. Love, Kurt Jr.
Kurt Jr. is in fact Kurt Vonnegut Jr., who had been captured by the Germans at the Battle of the Bulge and returned to the United States in the summer of 1946. Vonnegut went on to become one of the world's most esteemed and influential writers, and his experience in Dresden inspired the literary classic Slaughterhouse-Five.
From the Whittier Daily News, Saturday, June 6th, 1998. Army Chaplain George R. Barber spent June 6, 1944, in a foxhole under a Normandy sky illuminated by tracer bullets. The chaplain had stormed the beach, just one soldier among thousands in the great Allied invasion of D-Day. War is ugly. War is hell, the 80-year-old Whittier resident said Friday. We pointed our guns in the air and shot at everything and anything. By morning light the next day, he could see the bodies of fallen comrades. The American death toll was 1,531 in 24 hours on the beach he landed on. At 30, he later became a lieutenant colonel. He was the youngest chaplain on duty on the invasion. A vivid recollection is of watching a ship filled with American soldiers colliding with a mine and exploding. D-Day marked the beginning of the final phase of the struggle against Nazi Germany. I was there as a man of God to lead men closer to God and with morale and families and loved ones to face up to the fact that they are called upon to kill people, he said. It was his responsibility to aid closure to horrific acts of death and to comfort those in mourning. War is one of those necessary evils in a world where nations are led by evil men such as Hitler and Mussolini. He goes on, we have to bury our dead before we can move on, Barber said of the deaths. As such, he helped choose the site for the first U.S. cemetery overlooking Omaha Beach. We would save the dog tags and lay them down, he said. 54 years later, he still remembers what he said to the fallen troops. These men have given their lives for God and country and have inherited the kingdom prepared for them by God and Christ. But it was time to move forward, to push ahead. American troops eventually overcame the Nazis, continued east to Paris, and on to Germany. When they reached Remagen Bridge over the Rhine River in Germany, 10 days of constant bombing left 2 of his colleagues dead. They were 2 of 250 engineers fighting to repair the bridge to keep the supply lines open. Though he pulled several of the men out of the water and twisted wreckage, I held the 2 fatally wounded men in my arms and watched them die. Barbara was also with the troops when they arrived at a concentration camp in Nordhausen, Germany. But before we got there, 100 Jewish men were crowded into the building and set afire. War is ugly. War is hell, he repeated.
Bob and Cassie. Korea is America's forgotten war. All the politics involved only serve to increase the difficulty of this war. However, men who fought will not be forgotten.
My dearest darling, I don't know how to start this. I don't even know if you will receive it. This is the first chance I've had to write when we're weak. I can't explain everything now. All I want to do at this time is to let you know that I am okay, and for you not to worry. I will try to write you a long letter tomorrow. I've got to hurry this off, all right? The past 2 weeks have been nightmares. Simply hell. I could never begin to explain just what happened. I'll try to in my next letter. I only hope you get this. I know you must be worried. Please don't, dear. Don't worry. Just keep loving me and praying for me. It's so cold now I can't hardly write. I also drew this Christmas card for you. It's the best and only thing I can offer you this year, other than my love. And you've always had that. I hope you're okay, Cassie. Please take care of yourself, and please stay strong. All my thoughts are of you, and you're the only reason that I've made it through so far. I love you more than ever, Cassie, and more so each day. Forever yours, love, Bob.
Left for dead. This letter was found in the wastepaper basket in a bank near the safety deposit boxes. The writer, Paul, was addressing his family from his hospital bed in Japan. He was wounded in the thigh by a sniper's bullet during a fierce firefight with the Chinese troops that saw many American casualties, including the men who were wounded while helping Paul to shelter in a ditch because he couldn't walk. The surviving Americans went off for help.
Dearest wife and family, I saw some guys walking against the dim light of the sky, walking towards me, and I yelled for help, and they started towards me. They had long, fixed bayonets. They were Chinese soldiers. They squatted, stood around, and looked at me for a while, and didn't harm me or abuse me. In fact, I saw an honest look of pity and sympathy on every face. I knew then that they wouldn't leave me there to freeze and die. They took me by the hands, tied a belt around my feet, and dragged me for about a mile to a small, burned-out village. And then a Chinese medic came, put a fresh bandage on my leg, put me on a litter. I was carried into the one house that was left standing, where they made a warm fire for me and covered me up as best that they could. I'm sure that what they did saved my life. Our 1st and 2nd battalions were coming through, and the Chinese had to leave. I opened the door and I yelled for help. And they, the Americans, they heard me, and I found God, and they found me, and I thank God. I love you. I have an idea that I'll be seeing you soon. P.S. What's left of the squad would like some cookies.
Private Joe Klein. The following narrative was discovered among the pages of a book recently donated to the Chino Valley Library.
I was an 18-year-old Marine in Vietnam during the Tet Offensive in 1968. I was a truck driver in the first big elite convoy to arrive at Quai Sam. We left Da Nang in late January and fought our way through Hue and Quang Tri, entering Kalu in about the middle of February. Kalu is the last small village before reaching the Marines under siege at Quai Sam. We had to stop at Kalu because the bridges were blown on the road ahead. So we were waiting for the Army to set up some pontoon bridges. I got out of my truck and walked to the radio jeep in front of me. As I approached the jeep, I heard the hissing sound of a tire losing air. I told the jeep driver that his tire was going flat and proceeded to move the spare for him. I leaned the spare tire against the jeep and went back to the truck to look up an airline. When I returned to the jeep, the captain walked around the rear of the jeep and bumped the tire. It rolled across the road into an abandoned rice field. I ran up to recover the tire, turned around to bring it back when an Army jeep stopped. An officer jumped out and stood by the side of the road. He yelled, "What do you think you're doing out there, Marine?" I thought it was pretty obvious. I yelled back, "I'm recovering this tire, sir." The officer replied, "Do you know you're in a minefield?" At that moment, I began remembering movies I'd seen, men being blown up in German minefields. As I stood there, I looked around for some sure signs that this officer was right. I then noticed the little red triangles with skulls and crossbones that the French used years ago. We were taught in basic training to drop to our knees and crawl with a bayonet poking in the ground in front of us searching for mines. This I could not do because my gear was in the truck. I looked back up the road and I saw a crowd of Marines and Army troops were forming along the roadside. And I swear they were taking bets. I couldn't have been in that minefield longer than 15 minutes before a chopper with a ladder hanging down got me out. However, that was the longest 15 minutes I ever went through. Other than being completely embarrassed, the only part of me that was hurt was my Marine Corps pride. From then on, I was very careful in changing flat tires, and then only my own. Joseph Klein.
On January 21st, 1968, communist forces, which according to President Johnson were on the verge of collapse, blitzed the heavily fortified Marine base at Quai Sam. 9 days later, launched a massive coordinated attack throughout the South. 29-year-old Lieutenant Ray W. Stubbe, a chaplain in the Navy Reserves, was one of the 6,000 troops pinned down by the North Vietnamese at Quai Sam. Stubbe knew his parents in Milwaukee, Wisconsin would soon learn of the assault, and on January 21st, he sent the following letter.
Dear folks, first, I'm okay. Not even a scratch. The casualties have been comparatively small, so don't worry. I wrote my last entry in my log beginning December 1st. Since our post office was hit this morning, I gave it to one of the pilots of the plane to mail via registered mail. I don't know if it will ever get home. Please write me if it does. It's a green record book diary covering the period 1 December to today, plus a lot of personal papers. We are, as you've probably heard in the news, under attack. It's the scariest thing that I've ever had to face. I awoke at 5 o'clock to the sound of incoming rockets and mortars exploding just outside my hooch. They hit our ammunition dump and rounds of ammunition were flying all day long. Practically half the base is in ruins. The casualties were very few because everyone got in bunkers. The only casualties were from the lines on the perimeter of the base from Hill 861. I'm writing this as the sun is setting today. I don't know if you'll ever receive this, but I must write it anyway. The base is quite safe. The airstrip wasn't harmed, and planes keep coming and going. We still have our artillery for the counter-mortar attacks. My hooch is well built, sturdy. We have a lot supporting us. So don't worry. I feel like I'm needed here. I give my every waking moment for these men. They're basically good men, not particularly religious as such, although I'm quite sure that many of them prayed today. And I love them all, give my life daily for them. I don't do it for personal satisfaction or companionship or a sense of personal accomplishment, but because I feel this is God's will. You, of course, know my love for you and Granddad and all, Peg and Jean, Jackie, Henry, everyone, but especially you and Grandma. I've not always been a good son, and I know I've caused you grief at times, unsureness and anxiety at other times, but I've always loved all of you very deeply. There's not really much more to say about this situation. I've recorded everything and all the details in my log. Love, Ray.
This is a letter by Stanley Homiski to his wife. Stanley served with B Troop, 34th Cavalry, 25th Infantry Division, and he started as a radio operator and completed his tour as a communications sergeant. He was married shortly before shipping out and has stayed married to the same woman for 30 years. They have 2 children, a daughter and a son. Stanley wrote this letter in 1968.
Dear Roberta, today's probably the worst day I've ever lived in my entire short life. Once again, we were in contact with Charlie, and once again we suffered losses. The losses that we had today hit home. As my best friend in the hole was killed. He was only 22 years old, and he was going on R&R the 1st of June to meet his wife in Hawaii. You feel that if I was only a half a second sooner pulling the trigger, he'd still be alive. It's strange how half a second is the difference between life and death. This morning we're talking about how we're only 2 years different in age and how we both had gotten married before coming to this place. You know, I can still feel his presence as I write this letter. I hope I'm able to survive and leave this far behind me. If there is a place called hell, this surely must be it. We must be the devil's disciples doing all the dirty work. I keep asking myself, if there is a God, why the hell does some young man with so much to live for have to die? Just hope his death is not in vain. Just don't worry too much about me. As if you won't. For I will take care of myself, and I will look forward to the day that I'm able to be with you again. Love, Stan.
September 1969. Dear Mom and Dad, getting short, Mom. Coming home pretty soon. Gonna quit flying soon. Too much for me now. I went in front of a board for Spec 5. We'll know soon if I make it. I have now 20 oak leaf clusters and some more paper for you. I've flown 1,500 miles 1,500 hours. Now, in those hours, I could tell you a lifelong story. I've been put in for a medal again, but I've seen far beyond whatever you will see. That is why I'm going to quit flying. I dream of Valerie's hand touching mine, telling me to come home. But I wake up and some sergeant's telling me I gotta fly. Today, I'm 21. Far away, but come home older. Love, Larry.
I'm sorry to say, Larry died within 24 hours after this letter was written, and by that time, it really was his 21st birthday in the States. Larry was in the 129th Assault Helicopter Company, December 1968 till 1969.
American girls will always stand up and salute. We'll always recognize when we see a little flying. There's a lot of them dead, so we can sleep in peace now when we lay down. My daddy served in the army, where we lost his right eye, but he threw a flag out in our yard till the day that he died. He wanted my mother, my brother, my sister, and me to grow up and live and eat in the land of the free. Now this nation that I love is falling under attack. A-97 bunch came flying in from somewhere in the back. So we can see clearly through our big black eye, and we lit up the world and the village to justice will be served and the battle will rage. This big dog will fight when you rattle his cage. And you'll be sorry that you messed with the US of A. 'Cause we'll put a bullet in your eyes.
During the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, service members were more likely to transmit their messages home as emails. But there are exceptions. In early March of 2002, coalition forces began to gear up for Operation Anaconda, a major assault on the Taliban and al-Qaeda strongholds in the mountains of Afghanistan. Before advancing into what would become one of the worst firefights of the Afghan campaign, 23-year-old Sergeant Josh Harapko with the 10th Mountain Division neatly hand-wrote the following letter to his mother.
Dear Mom, I'm writing this letter before I leave. I couldn't say what I wanted to over the phone. First, I want to say I love you so much. You were always there for me, though I would never talk about my problems. Second, you gave me the options to be a man, giving me slack in the rope to try to make the right decisions. No matter what, you always believed in me, no matter how much of a punk I was to you. We're leaving for Bagram to flesh out 600 Taliban soldiers from the mountains. This is the biggest battle in the war on terrorism. We've already sustained 30 casualties and 1 KIA. I don't want you to worry about me. I know you will because I'm your son. Mom, I'm not afraid to die for something that is right. I just hope that I made you proud. And if I don't come home for any reason, I just want you to know I will always be with you. I want you to know you raised the cream of the crop. Well, Mom, I have to go now. All that I have said here are words from my heart, and I mean every last one of them. Tell Aunt Joyce I said hi, and I love her. I hope to see you soon, but if that doesn't work out, I just needed you to know how I felt. I love you. I miss you. Take care. You're always in my thoughts. Your loving son, Josh.
Josh survived combat in Afghanistan, but died almost exactly a year later on March 11th, 2003, when the Black Hawk helicopter he was flying in crashed during a training mission at Fort Drum, New York. Shortly before he died, he decided to give his mother the letter he had written in the uncertain hours before Operation Anaconda. She cherishes it as his last letter home.
Over Christmas, my internship battalion was activated, and instead of going back to school, I'm spending the spring in Iraq, in between Fallujah and Baghdad, in the heart of the Sunni Triangle. These are random observations from my war. It is not complete. It will probably all change tomorrow. Forgive me if I'm not organized. Living in a land of insanity makes it difficult to be coherent. 20-some Iraqis were killed here yesterday by mortars at about 2 in the afternoon. The rounds landed about 650 feet from me. Today, their relatives found out the names of the dead. I sleep in a prison cell, literally. It was part of Saddam Hussein's most notorious torture center. I eat breakfast where he killed 30,000 Iraqis over the last 10 years. Yesterday, a kid who couldn't have been any older than 4 pointed a stick at me like a rifle and pretended to shoot me. I wonder if someday my kids will meet him on some distant battlefield. I pray to God that if I have a son, he never has to go to war. That would tear my heart out. I feel very bad for my family. I know that I'm putting them through hell. Sometimes I feel guilty for not just studying abroad. But you get a chance, hug your mom for me. For my mom is 9,000 miles and 6 months away. I would do anything to give her a hug right now. I miss her a lot. I can't speak for all. But for most of us, it seems like our biggest concern is not getting killed, but getting left behind. It feels that everyone back in the world is getting on with their lives. Finishing school, getting jobs and internships, friends planning their future. And we are frozen in time. When I get back, friends will be gone. Innocence will be lost. And things will have changed. I just want things to be the way they used to be. Stephen.
Service members often refer to one another using call names, essentially nicknames inspired by a physical characteristic, a personality trait. In the case of Second Lieutenant Barbara Heine Demetria, a single unfortunate incident that draws the attention of the chain of command, and in this case, a future U.S. Secretary of Defense.
We were trudging over to the Combat Operations Center. General Mathis, as in the commanding general of the entire 1st Marine Division, had us back to the entrance. I was heading through the passageway when I felt myself slip, almost in slow motion. I thought, no, woof, as I tumbled head first into his butt. Yes, my head, his butt. Now every time I see him, I blush and he smiles, thinking, I'm sure, yep, that's the girl. Love, Heine.
We would love for you to join us as we sing together, God Bless the USA.